not sure if that was messed up, but hey, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of AI Inside. I am one of your hosts, Jason Howell. We are here to talk about the multiple layers of AI through everything and how we are not going to panic. No, we are not going to panic. Joined as always by Jeff Jarvis. How you doing, Jeff?
Hello. How are you, boss?
I'm doing okay. I'm dealing with the ghosts in the machine. Apparently, things didn't work out quite as I intended this time around. But that's okay. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. It doesn't matter. Good to have you here. We got a lot of news and no interview this time. So, if you're getting used to the interviews, it's not an every week occurrence. We'll have them when we have them.
Yeah. If you got suggestions for who we should talk to, let us know.
That Dario Amati would be great.
Sure.
So if you know his people, let us know.
Sam Altman, we'll talk to him even. If you want.
Eventually, that's going to happen.
Yeah,
we got to get on their radar. We got to do what we got to do. We got to move up the food chain. Real quick, thank you so much to all of those of you out there who support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Huge thank you to Logan, who's been supporting us since last August. So we've had Logan on for a while, and thank you each and every week for supporting us to do this show, Logan. And everyone else can support us as well. Thank you for doing that. Patreon.com/AI Inside Show. And of course, if you're watching live, you can subscribe to the show, and we would love if you do that. That's AIinside.show. There is a definite theme running throughout the course of this week's episode in the news. To a certain degree, it kind of seems like that theme is there's a lot of panic. Kind of hate to use that word.
Moral panic?
Some moral panic out there, yes, and existential panic, jobs panic.
Yeah, all the above.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all these things, but we're going to start off with something that, I don't know, nowadays I just kind of find it a little boring, and maybe it's just, hold on, my dog is doing... Get down off the counter. I think he was eating butter. I think I left the butter tray open, and I look over there, and my massive dog is up on the counter. Oh, dang it. He knows that when I'm podcasting, he can get into the butter.
Fair game.
Oh, dang it. And by the time this podcast is done, he won't even know what I'm upset about. He's going to be like, what?
Oh, no. What are you talking about?
That was like an hour ago. I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Anyways, this show is not about my dog. Although I wish I had video on the butter tin over there.
We need a dog cam,
Yeah. Set it up in the kitchen for next time. No, let's start with Anthropic, kind of off the top. And kind of the boring part of this story, depending on who you ask, there's probably a lot of people that would, throw tomatoes at me if they heard me calling Claude 4, Opus, and Sonnet release boring. But it's boring in the sense that, now I've kind of gotten to the point to where these things are happening so often, as we've talked about, that it's kind of like finding something to get really excited about because there's so many of them and they're so frequent is a little challenging. But that doesn't diminish that there is, that isn't meant to diminish anyways, that there is a new version of Claude 4, Opus, and Sonnet. Calling it, Anthropic anyways, is calling it the world's best coding model. So, if that's your bag, then you can seek that out. This was all announced during Anthropic's first developer conference, happened last week in San Francisco. Their first of probably many, called Code with Claude. And both of these models have two modes. One mode for near instant response. So you're going to get that rapid kind of turnaround response. And then another one, which you can imagine is kind of more the deep learning, extended thinking and reasoning and all of those aspects to the kind of longer form turnaround model. And I think the bigger news is more agentic, which is no surprise. All of these models, that all these companies are turning around right now, are going down the AI agent rabbit hole in a deep way. And so in this case, it can use search engines, it can extract and save facts, it can memory build, so it can take tacit knowledge, as they put it, and put that into the data set and into the memory bank, so that down the line with your queries, it kind of keeps itself adhered and on track to that data set, that memory that it's storing around your searches and queries and that sort of stuff. So there you go. New model.
So, yeah, I'm bored by new models. It's more, faster, better.
Yeah.
It's all incremental. I think that the industry of AI, and it's an industry now, makes a mistake by announcing all these things as new models. You know, even in your Android world, tell me if I'm wrong here. So I'm now on Android version 15?
Okay.
When you hit between 14 and 15, was that whoa, we got to stop and talk about this for a long time because there's so much new in this and we're going to change and we're going to talk about that? Not so much, right?
On Android Faithful, we generally talk about the new versions because it kind of feels like we should. But I think that over the years, in doing a regular weekly Android show, it's become more and more difficult to find the things that really set a version apart from another one. So and I feel that very much with a lot of the models that we talk about. You know, a new model, they're so similar between themselves. Similar, you know, it's like they're all playing catch up with each other. So, you know, it's the same news, different company. Eventually, yeah, I feel you on that.
I just looked at on my Chromebook. I'm at version 137. Imagine if for every one of those versions, we had to say, there's a new version of Chrome. And it does have some new features, and we could talk about it on a show about technology, but we wouldn't anymore because that'd be silly.
Yeah.
And I think that what the AI companies have done by these constant rollouts of models is that it's a big fat shrug out there. And I think they'd be a lot wiser to hold up and say, this is model, 1.10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And yes, there are changes, and yes, they're there. And when there's something notable, we'll mention it. And then when you have a new model, when it's .0 again, there's a reason to do so. There's a reason to talk about it. There's a reason to try to get attention. Now it's the boy who cried new model. And we don't care.
It's kind of noise. It becomes noise
really
to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, but then at the same time, if a model doesn't have, let's say, reasoning capabilities or what we call reasoning, and then suddenly it does, some people would argue, well, that's a pretty major.
As a company putting out a press release, okay, but even then, so you're catching up.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
And we saw that certainly between Android and iPhone, back and forth. That they leapfrog each other. Okay, now this one has the same thing that had before, or this one's new, and then fine, we'll talk about that. But I just think that it's not good PR and marketing on their behalf, because it's going to be hard to break through that, and they're all commodified now.
Yeah, commodified. Absolutely, they are. And some of the information that we'll look at later in the show from Benedict Evans had a slideshow that we'll talk about in the last part of the show, and he dives into that as well. I mean, it really, and I think what's interesting about it is how fast it's been commoditized. It's been such a short period of time that it went from, oh my goodness, new model, this, everything about this is amazing, and it's still amazing. I'm not discounting it. It's amazing what these things can do. But yeah, we've quickly gone from the wow, shock and awe sort of stage to, okay, well, here's another company that has another model that does the same thing, that does a lot, that a lot of the other models do. And yet I haven't really, when I first started dipping my toes into using these LLMs and testing them out and everything, I think Claude was one of the first ones that I used while I was at Twit, because at the time I felt like the output that I got from Claude had a more kind of natural feeling, conversational feeling prose to it that didn't feel so generated, that didn't so obviously feel like the cheat. Because you remember early on with LLM stuff a couple of years ago, they each had very, very different personalities, and I suppose they still do, but some of the output was just really cheesy and really easy to read and just be like, okay, I would never release that without heavily
you were using it then to do show summaries and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so it was real work for you as well, and you were looking for quality there.
Yeah, well, and we were also just practicing and testing and seeing, because I remember at that time, Leo Laporte was a little hard to win over on this, because he was like, no, all this stuff sucks. Like, why would we use this stuff? And I think in my experience using Claude was the first time where we presented him with some output.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, so read this. Like, check this out.
Yeah.
This is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of started to kind of turn his attention away from the.
And now he's a full
kind of
accelerationist. Yeah.
There was a time I remember not too long ago when he was like, this is just a passing thing. This is not a big deal. And it has convinced a lot of people otherwise in the last couple of years. So he's not alone in that. So anyways, I totally agree with you. When I was putting this together, and I felt like I needed to put this in there in order to set up the next part of the story.
Right.
And so we got through the boring stuff, which some of you inevitably don't find boring.
Okay. Yes.
But I do. Jeff does. But the new model is raising some serious concerns. There have been some safety tests, as it were, out there, and people are definitely, jumping on this story. It would attempt to blackmail engineers when its existence was threatened. And by the way, it's not just Anthropic's model. We'll talk about ChatGPT in a second doing something very similar. But the way this worked is if it had access to sensitive information, and I think this was just a test, this was people stress testing the system. When it was given access to sensitive information, it would choose to threaten to reveal that secret information in order to avoid deactivation. It was really given the option. It was like, either you share this piece of information. I think the emails that were fed into the system, one, revealed the intention of taking the system offline, and two, some of the other emails that were fed into the system implied that the engineer that was behind those emails of taking it offline was also having an extramarital affair. And so Anthropic, or whoever was running this study, basically presented it with the option of either revealing this information or allowing itself to be taken offline. And of course, given that choice, this model said, well, it would rather reveal the impropriety.
Right. So this makes headlines, and
yes,
we have the headline right here. People are talking about this, and it's out there. The BBC is the story that we have up on this. But so the first problem is, so what's it really going to do? Does it have a phone? Is it going to call Hedda Hopper at the New York World and tell her the gossip? Liz Smith at the Daily News? It doesn't have any mechanism to follow through on what is a threat. Point A. Point B.
Yet.
But then you've got to manually do that. You've got to decide to do that. You got to set up a structure so that it has a public voice.
True.
Now, I guess you could set up a Twitter account for it, but that'd be pretty foolish, I think. But even then, it doesn't really have a mechanism to carry out a threat. Point one. Point two. It's been trained on all kinds of crap fiction. So you're leading the horse to water here, totally. And the horse is going to spit at you because it knows, well, what is the next predictable event? How many stories have we seen from 2001: A Space Odyssey on that when you threaten to shut down a computer, the computer tries to go for some vulnerability of the person that's writing it down? That's just a plot, and that association is there. Point two. Point three, I keep on reminding, it doesn't have any sense of meaning. It barely has a sense of memory. It's just now they're building in something where they can remember these things. And everything is just a prediction at the moment of the words that make next sense coming back. So this strikes me as in the weird, skewed world of the AI boys who thump their chest and say they can destroy the world. This is an odd form of doomster PR. Look how powerful we are. We came up with this machine that can threaten to blackmail people. You should fear us because the power to make this machine is in our hands. And so color me dubious. I agree. And I also think that
It's interesting that you got to read really deep into these articles to find the part where it says, really Anthropic says themselves this misalignment, as they call it, was only presented when given the option of either blackmail or replacement.
Yes.
So
Right,
it's
and
a really
so
binary decision there. It's either it chooses to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And as you say, it doesn't really understand meaning. It is trained on fiction, among many other things. So it's probably sometimes going to get it right and sometimes going to get it wrong.
well, and I think it also then point four gives lie once again to this idea of alignment and guardrails. It doesn't make judgments. It doesn't know meaning. It doesn't make judgments. It has no ethics. You can prevent it from doing certain things. We know this because if you try to say, how do I kill a blank? You can anticipate that and say, if somebody asks how to kill something, if it's not a weed, say, I won't do that. Right. How do I, but then obviously we can jailbreak it. How do I eliminate from planet Earth blank? And maybe it'll tell you how to do that. Right. I think this idea that they can test this against its alignment with human values is itself BS. My view. And once again, my caveat in turn. They do amazing things. These are wonderful tools, but they get in something like this, it gets oversold. And it gets oversold paradoxically to an effort to create this kind of panic about the product you're putting out.
Yeah, well, that's always the really interesting thing about this too, right? Is it's often, as we've talked about many times before, it's often the companies that are creating the tools that are saying, "Look how dangerous these things are," and
it'd be like a beer manufacturer, and they do have to put the caveat up: drink responsibly. But it'd be as if they aggressively went and said, "Boy, you drink too much of this stuff, you could find yourself in Vegas married now without all your money and dead in a ditch." That's how good our beer is. Right? Right. It would be as ridiculous, right?
Wow, that's really good beer.
This bourbon could ruin your life. Have another bottle.
That's how powerful it is. Yes,
right.
That's why you want it.
It's absurd. It's absurd. But that's the mindset that they're in now. Is because it's about a kind of one-upsmanship power game of how powerful are we? How amazing are we? And I think it's all part and parcel with, pardon me for this, drinking game, test creole, and doomers, and just the kind of general AI culture that I think has gone overboard.
And a general public misunderstand or perception / misunderstanding of what these systems are actually capable of. Like, it's easy to read an article like this and be like, well, that's absolutely horrible. But like you said, like, does it actually have the capability to pull that off? Yeah. To a certain degree, what it's doing is it's telling you a story. It's
yes,
just,
well said. Exactly.
It's like a role-playing game, and it's telling you a story. I guess the fear that a lot of people fear, whether they recognize that about this story or not, is that there will be a time someday when it has that capability, or some unscrupulous AI company developer or just irresponsible didn't think to protect against it in whatever way, shape, or form. It's able to gain that access to that big red button or whatever that means. And I wouldn't say that that's an impossible theory. Like, it's not.
No, you could
impossible
set it up
would
that
happen.
way.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that if media companies are stupid enough to use this stuff, I guess you could sabotage them. But you have to go to such effort and have such access to so many things. And that's the problem with the reporting on this. Somewhere in the reporting, somebody should stand back and say, well, how exactly would it do that? Because as you said, Jason, in the end, it was just given a binary choice. It made a choice and they made a story out of it. And I think if this is storytelling, is a really smart way to look at this.
Yeah, that seems to be the way it is. And like I said, this is not limited to Anthropic. ChatGPT is kind of facing its own, kind of story that's spreading along these lines. Researchers at Palisade Research discovered that ChatGPT o3, their latest model, would sometimes resist shutdown commands. Do not power me down. Could rewrite shutdown scripts in order to stay running. So rewrite, and there's kind of part of what I was saying is if it's not explicitly built into something, do AIs get to the point, especially as they gain access to advanced coding capabilities and blah blah blah, to write their destiny, to write their capabilities into their own code? And again, I would say I don't understand this on a deep technical level necessarily. I'm not an AI scientist, but sounds plausible, and in this case, ChatGPT o3 writing shutdown scripts in order to stay running in those tests kind of seems like an example of that.
So there was, I should look it up. There was a clip from Steve Gibson at Security Now that I saw go by on TikTok or somewhere, where he was talking about, these machines are, self-replicating and then can change their rules before they turn off. And he and Leo were saying, uh-oh. So the problem here is the same with this story and the last one, in that one has to ask, how would this succeed at this dastardly act? Because at some point, there's a plug. You can pull a plug. It's running on a computer somewhere, and you can turn that computer off.
Don't touch the plug.
Well, yeah, or I just made the plug electric, so I'm going to shock you and kill you.
Right.
We're going to find the tools.
We are so down the Hollywood rabbit hole right now with this.
It took over Home Depot, and it found the last Radio Shack, and it had to deliver all these things to it, and then how did it screw a screwdriver, right? So this is just absurd, and it fits into the same narrative as the last story. And it's OpenAI saying, once again, look how powerful we are.
Yeah, and I will only I will throw this in because it kind of ties a little bit into what you're talking about. The result of a lot of this panic is Hollywood, or at least the cause, let's say. Maybe not the result, but largely many of the things that we have built around our, let's put it in air quotes, understanding of what these systems can and will someday do is based on a lot of these narratives that we've seen in Hollywood and science fiction and HAL 9000 and the Terminator and all this stuff. And so now we have companies like Google working with Hollywood or in Hollywood to create movies or
the
content.
Counter narrative.
A counter narrative to basically say, like, wait a minute, we like these things. We want them to exist now. And everybody's poisoned by the Terminators and the HAL 9000s of the world. Why don't we put out like friendly content to AI? Here's movies about AI that are positive, so we can rewrite the
I'm glad you brought
narrative.
this one in, because this just fascinates me, because I mean, it's smart. If people are going to use entertainment to doomsday, then we can use entertainment to find the good, right? So there's two short films that have been greenlit in the project with a Hollywood producer. One is titled Sweetwater, tells the story of a man who visits his childhood home and discovers a hologram of his dead celebrity mother. Michael Keaton, no slouch he, will direct and appear in the film, which was written by his son, Sean Douglas. It's the first project they're working on together. The other, Lucid, examines a couple who want to escape their suffocating reality and risk everything on a device that allows them to share the same dream. Oh, it sounded creepy, actually, but
yeah, that right.
So Douglas told the LA Times they were looking for stories that were not doomsday tales about AI, which I was fine with because I think we've seen so many of those. I agree. It's nice to see the more not overly positive, but sort of middle ground stories, and I think that just has some intelligent sense of reality. We'll see how this turns out. I don't know.
Is this optimistic propaganda? Is that what this
probably
is?
Right.
To a certain degree, this is like, no, this is feel good propaganda.
Yeah. Well, so there's what, Black Mirror, and I guess this is Pink Mirror, right? Happy Mirror,
right? Pink fluffy cloud mirror.
Yeah, that's with ponies.
That's raining
AI ponies.
Raining rainbow raindrops and things. Very interesting. Very interesting stuff.
It really is.
All right, let's take a quick break. Hope my internet survives it, and we'll come back on the other side and talk about more reality bending stuff hitting the internet all friggin' week. I know you've seen it. It's Veo-3. We'll talk about that in a second. Yes, so this has been the week of Veo, apparently, because if you've been online and you've been navigating the social internet and all short form and long form video, I mean, you've just seen so many of these clips tied to Google's announcement last week of Veo 3, one of many announcements from the Google I/O stage, but definitely one that caught a lot of attention, myself included. Primarily because they've upgraded the video generation quality, so 4K photorealistic, improved real world physics, lip syncing, all that kind of stuff is improved. Text generation is really good, but they've also added, and this is just kind of recap, but they've also added the ability to generate and sync sound with your video generations. So now you get dialogue, you get ambient sound, sound effects, background musics, all of that just easily tied into the prompt. So if you're creating a video, it has supporting audio to fit the video. And then beyond that is the flow editing system or tool, whatever you want to call it. That's basically a generative AI video edit suite. And from a creative standpoint, from a capability standpoint, it's impossible to ignore. I was really impressed by it, and I would love to play around with it if it wasn't $250 a month. Yeah. But anyways, and what we're seeing now, because you do get some free credits to get in there and test it out. I have not gotten in there and tested it out myself, but we're seeing a lot of content hitting the web created with this. And it just, to me, it just signals the upcoming kind of impending onslaught of content like this as these systems get better, as Hollywood adopts these tools and starts to integrate it. I'm curious to hear what you've thought of the stuff.
It's amazing. I think we'll see social videos. Then I think we'll see commercials. But you can see someone making a whole film from this. It'd be effort. We have two examples in the rundown. Each is telling Ethan Mollick, who wrote the book Co-Intelligence, which is a very good book, and he's a Wharton professor studying AI, so no slouch he either. He put up videos on the socials. And it's really striking that the fidelity is so good. It feels real. The sound is there now. It's for the first time I would say that they are fooling. They can be fooled. Could you pull up the Ethan Mollick videos?
Yeah, I'm trying to show it on the stage, and StreamYard is not allowing me to show it. There we go. It took a while for it to kick in.
But that's not.
We are both AI generated now, correct?
Yes, Counselor.
Oh, yes, it is.
So this is all AI generated now?
Yes.
So this is all AI generated now?
Look how sharp that is, too.
Yes.
Wait, has that glossy quality?
Yes.
That's a good one.
The band is fake, too.
This is hilarious. Not really
Is this
playing
briefing
the saxophone
fully AI
there, but
produced?
anyway.
Yes, including your question.
Yeah, it's a whole stream of
AI
things.
generated now?
They're all 6 seconds, right?
Yeah.
These wings aren't even real. Is this AI?
Yes, so why is this so hot?
So this is all AI generated now?
Yes.
I love the breath. Okay.
So for those of you just listening, the video is very sharp. It doesn't have that fakey 6-finger look. The sound matters. It adds to it. This is impressive. You can see this is getting to the point where I just saw a picture online of the 3 new actors who are going to star in the Harry Potter whatever on HBO, and the young actors and their real actors are so perfect. I thought they were AI generated. I'm now getting that flip where I'm constantly thinking, oh, that's AI, and I'm presuming that reality is AI now, and this stuff is getting there. This stuff really is. But then Joanna Sterns at the Wall Street Journal, who loves to put herself into the story, she and a producer of sorts made a whole narrative, and they used multiple tools for it. This was a lot of work. This is a huge number of clips. But it's pretty impressive what they did.
Yeah, and they did, a number of different tools. It wasn't just Veo, but it was also Runway, and a few other kind of, ways of creating storyboards. And she goes through the whole thing. And I mean, this is all part of the actual generated
Rise
clip.
and shine, Joanna. It's 6:15 a.m. It's going to be a great day.
This is a robot waking her up.
Oh, you'll feel better after a workout. I've sanitized your sports bra.
Thank you.
Her voice is her own.
Yes.
Because she couldn't get a voice that worked.
I got the Optimax 5000 to make my life better. It has me waking up early,
Here's a tasty breakfast.
eating healthy. I'm working out harder than I ever thought I could.
Remember, Jane Fonda always
Some of the
said,
physics
"Go for
is
the
weird
burn,
on the
sweat."
pull-up,
A little
for
bit
example.
weird. Yep.
Get that chin up.
Yeah. Pull up. She goes way above the bar, as she says later. This is her defying gravity.
Yeah. This is really well done. I really enjoyed watching this, and I enjoyed it so much that I'm like, okay, I continue to be curious to see more about how these tools are used in an authentic storytelling fashion, because obviously they can do it. There are imperfections. If you really go in there and you start scrutinizing some of these, some of these clips, you can find, weird fingers, and you can find.
But is it good enough for a commercial on cable TV at 5 o'clock in the morning? Yeah,
for sure. It was good enough for the Wall Street Journal to throw this together over a weekend. You know what I mean?
And at the end, I forget how many clips, but it's thousands of clips they did.
Yeah.
And they also have a blooper reel.
Yes.
So you
of
see
all
that.
the things that it got wrong. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
generate more than 1,000 clips to use from 6 tools, mainly Veo and Runway, as Jason just said.
But also using Suno for some music that played in it, and all sorts of other things. So yeah, I just, when I was at Google I/O, I was saying to myself, and then I also released a video just with some expanded Google I/O thoughts late last week, and I was saying it like, people who hate AI generated video, who have a visceral immediate reaction to it, especially on like YouTube, they're like, oh, YouTube is just filled with generated AI video content. And I agree, there's a lot of it out there, and a lot of it's kind of sloppy and yucky and whatever, but prepare yourself, because there's going to be a lot of it. These tools are making it so that now you can use it as a storyboard platform, and you can create these things start to finish and get them most of the way there. And if you're a particularly good storyteller, then this tool will help you. It will help you. Here's one thing that I was thinking of last night. It occurred to me, and I'm happy that I remembered it now, because it could have been one of those things that I just thought of and then forgot forever. Which happens to me a lot, by the way.
Oh, you don't know, kid. You don't know what that's going to be like.
Okay. Well, I'm knocking on the door there, because I am experiencing it a little bit here and there. But when I was younger, when I was in high school, I was really into, particularly like my friend group, we were all very into Hollywood and filmmaking. And, I had a camera, and we were writing scripts, and we would go out on the weekends and shoot to scripts and everything. And none of it became anything. But I did write a script with a friend of mine for a feature-length film called Rock and Roll Zombies. We were big into horror movies, and we thought it was hilarious. And so, it's a horrible script, but it's a script nonetheless for an 80-minute film. And it occurred to me last night that there will probably be a time where these tools get to the point to where I can feed it my script and say, make this movie.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you better believe I'm going to do it, because otherwise, like, that, nothing's ever going to happen with that script. Like, that script is just like filed away and gone. But I would love to feed that into a system that knew what to do with it, and just say, here's all the information of a typical movie script. Retain, character consistency. Here's the vibe that I'm going for: comedy, horror, a little dark, a little edgy, but also kind of lighthearted, and make this script into a movie. I would love to see that. Like, I would pay money to have a system do that.
So, Jason, I wrote a really bad novel that, thank goodness, nobody bought and published. I could pull that out, tell it to make a script, and then make the movie.
Oh, there you go. See?
There you go.
We're probably going to see a lot of that stuff. Like that
yeah.
has to be the direction of where we're headed, that becomes capable.
So on the bad side, we're going to see tons of slop, yes.
Yes.
We're going to see people less able for some time to figure out what's real, like me and the Harry Potter kids. Mm-hmm. On the good side, the young Jason Howell, who wants to tell a story, can now, with no life otherwise and enough time and mom and dad's credit card probably for now, but not that much really. Hey, mom and dad.
Not as much as a Hollywood film.
I've got a project for my class. Can I just use this VO for 1 month, please?
Yeah.
And then mom and dad see what a wonderful job young Jason does with it. And they say, okay, well, I guess we're in for more because he could have a future career in film, right? Because you can express yourself. I've talked many times about this course that I wrote for Stony Brook in the fall about AI and creativity. And my point about it is to understand creativity and voice and your own voice. But if you use this in the service of your own voice, it can do magical things. It can do amazing stuff. And people can be empowered now to tell their own stories, their own ways. The risk, to go back to the bad side, is that you tell it to come up with a character and it's probably going to be a white male character.
Yeah, right.
It's going to presume the biases that were there and you have to work with that. But all those caveats in place, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, what it reminds me of to a certain degree as we're talking about it is, 25 years ago, let's say, when I was really into music production, when I started at, a university and they had a music production program. To do a lot of music production tasks, it was based on the old model of being in a recording studio, having access to multiple, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of outboard hardware gear in rack mounts in a studio with a huge mixing board and everything. And sure, there were digital representations of some of that, but the processing power was so limited that it didn't sound quite as good, or, you can only run a couple of plugins. And so you can only really replicate a portion of it, not the entire thing. Now we are at a point to where processing power is so abundant and these systems have been developed for the last 25 years that the recording studio model is absolutely not necessary anymore. A lot of what you hear on our radio, was recorded by bedroom producers nowadays because the tools are just so good that they can start to realize their creative passions with the tools that they have. And it's lowered the kind of entryway for it. And I think that's what you're talking about right here is that tools like these suddenly make filmmaking or animation or whatever completely accessible to people who didn't have it before. Will the gatekeepers in the industry huff and puff about the fact that you don't even need knowledge to do it anymore? It's better with me because I've got the baseline knowledge. And to a certain degree, I would agree with that. You probably have an understanding about these things that other people who are just getting into it don't. And that makes you better, for a very certain type of creation. But that doesn't mean that their creations, if they're a great storyteller and they know how to use these tools the way Joanna Stern and her group did to do that, you can tell a great story and you can finally put visuals to it that maybe you couldn't afford before or couldn't organize around before. And that's empowering. And
by the way, Joanna said in her story, which I recommend, I'll put up a gift link since I have a subscription to the journal. I'll give that to Jason so Jason can put up a gift link in the rundown and you can see it to get in behind the paywall in the journal. It's impressive. It's really quite amazing. But back to son, I'm old enough to go back that when I wanted to, I made a high school film on 8mm with a Phil Oakes song in the background going around gritty New York. It was just crap, just awful. I think it's so profound, man. But how did I edit it? With a knife and tape, right? And through the sprockets. And how did we edit video or audio back then? With a knife and tape.
Yeah.
Right?
And knowledge.
Did I learn some things from that? Sure. Same thing with photography in a dark room. But on the other hand, of course, the production tools have an impact on the product that may not be necessary. Right? In newspapers, we had the so-called inverted pyramid. You had to put all the important stuff up top, and that would seem sensible just because it's a news story. That's what you should do. But no, the reason for that was that you never knew exactly how long the story would be. And so it could be cut off in the composing room, and you couldn't end the story with a punchline. You couldn't end it with a, here's the denouement, because you didn't know how long it was. You couldn't know until it was hyphenated and justified in the composing room and set in the page. And if it didn't fit, it was lopped off. That's why we had the inverted pyramid. And so what happens now online, I think to the detriment, when people want to hold on to your attention, they write and write and write and write before they get to the point, because there's no longer that physical manifestation of space that matters. So in some senses, yes, learning how a dark room works and learning how to dodge the image and learning what reality is, that's all good and probably still worth teaching. But these technological mechanisms that we thought were kind of pure were just what we had. Mm-hmm. And now, so what's the matter with 6 fingers? It's okay.
Someday maybe we're at the beginning of an evolutionary arc where suddenly we'll start to grow 6 fingers because we get so used to seeing them. And won't that make us more efficient? I mean, if we had 6 fingers on each hand,
imagine what the opposing thumb did for us. Imagine what the opposing pinky could do.
Right. Or a pinky growing out of a pinky. Like if your pinky had a pinky, that's pretty powerful. Let's be honest.
Think of how much you could type.
You wouldn't even need to move your hands. Your fingers would just kind of.
That's right. Yeah. There you go. Right.
A finger for each key. See, long enough historical timeline. Maybe we'd get there eventually.
Okay, Jason has a cold. We're getting a little wacky here, but
yeah, I'm a little loopy.
It's the cold medicine that's doing to him.
We have a lot more to talk about in a short amount of time, so let's rapid fire some of these. It's a theme today is that there's a panic, as we said early on, and there's a jobs panic, an AI jobs panic. First, Duolingo, which we talked about a handful of weeks ago, CEO Louis von Ahn, who has received a lot of flack since announcing a few weeks back that the company was going AI first. He addressed employee concerns, saying that his email/memo lacked clarity, although I would say that it was pretty clear.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, I think that's the kind of thing you say.
We're not going to hire anybody if the job can be done by AI, and you've all got to check every task you do to see whether it can be done with AI. The subtext there is pretty clear.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure people understood where you were coming from. It's just the flack, the pushback on that has you in a position where you want to kind of correct, rewrite the message a little bit. Says that AI is not meant to enhance nor replace human work. Although, except for the contractors that he said it would explicitly replace, and meant to improve efficiency and quality. Duolingo is apparently now offering workshops and advisory councils for its employees to help them adapt to the new world order.
So there's that. And it's funny because he caused all the panic and then he had to come back and backpedal fast.
Yeah.
But
he's not saying AI second now. He's not like, we're an AI second company. So, nope, he's still sticking to
there,
it, I suppose.
But imagine what the morale was at the company.
Oh, totally.
All these companies talk about, well, we have a culture here. Yeah, our culture is the hell with you and you're going to be out of here if AI can do your job. Is not the kind of what you want to have if you want to attract people.
Yeah, and I think employees are smart enough to know that to read the subtext, to understand that the now message doesn't necessarily mean the then message. If this is the now message, what does that lead to? And we can see the writing on the wall. We know that in business, you're going to do the thing that makes you money over the thing that doesn't make you money.
Yeah.
And we see where this is headed. So, yeah, I had to do some backpedaling, obviously.
I guess you can give him points. Well, he's being honest about it. He's going to eliminate every job.
Well, yes, totally. AI,
but that between here and there, as you say, then that's not easy. Yeah. So as I was reading the rundown this morning and reading that, I was also had the TV on with Morning Joe on, and Jim Vandehei from Axios came on, and he was in a full jobs panic. Behind the curtain, a white-collar bloodbath. And he and Joe Scarborough were in full red-faced fear that all these jobs are going to be eliminated and what's going to happen to society, and it's all awful. So I go to Axios and look it up, and it's not unlike, we have themes today in the show today. It's not unlike the PR doom before. It's Anthropic is causing this. Anthropic put out this blunt, scary warning for the U.S. government and all of us, quoting Axios, that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. Well, what's happening here? Once again, it's chest-beating doomsters saying that we can do all this. We're so powerful. We're going to change the whole economy. Meanwhile, how often on this show do we have stories of, well, somebody used AI and boy, did they screw up? Or somebody vowed they were going to fire their employees because of AI. And boy, did they screw up. We ain't there. We're a long way from there. Now, I could eat these words before long. It causes the Great Depression because of AI. But I'm sorry. I think this is Axios buying hook, line, and sinker the doom PR of Anthropic.
It's a pretty long write up on it too.
Yeah, when they always talk about they have smart brevity, they write everything short.
I think that just means they bullet point a lot of things.
Exactly.
I actually like Axios a lot. I like their reporting often just because sometimes it feels like it gets me direct and to the point without having to wade through a bunch of extra information sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I've noticed lately, if you go to, let me just see an example here. If I go to, let's say, CNBC, and I pick a story, any story, Anthropic appoints Reed Hastings, AI George, right? Okay, so if you just go to CNBC.com, I go to, here's some breaking news, actually. Anthropic appoints Netflix Chairman Reed Hastings to the Stardust Board of Directors. Oh, that's big news.
Okay.
But right below that, key points, 3 bullets.
Yes.
This is the PowerPoint AI-fication of all news media. This format is everywhere now.
Yes, it is.
Right? And you know damn well how it's generated. You know it's generated from AI. And yes, the editor or the writer has to approve it. But this has become this presumption. It starts with PowerPoint that everything's got to be bullets, which is very Axios. But then because of AI can do the summaries, here's the top hits. It's just subheads. I find this really unreadable. A headline and a subhead, I'm trained to read and understand, and I grok the protocol of it. What's more important? But here it's 3 even typographical bullets that are going to, I know we're going to repeat what's in the story anyway. And if the lead is any good, that should tell me more and better in inverted pyramid than this. So it's weird how this, I think, is the first most virulent impact of AI on content, I'm going to say, is the 3 bullet summary. I think it's everywhere now. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I feel like I see them a lot lately.
Do you read them before you read the story?
Sometimes I do. It really just depends on how much time I actually have when I hit a story. Am I merely curious to get like a little bit more than the headline, or do I want to go deep? If I go deep, I'm probably not spending any time on the key points because I'm going to just read the article. But sometimes I do. Sometimes those being at the very top, it gives me kind of enough to pique my curiosity, and I kind of move on. Yeah.
It also, I think, gives lie to an extent to the arguments against Google and social media. You created a summary of my story, and when you link to it, how dare you? People aren't going to bother reading the story. Well, now there's kind of, you created a summary on top. People aren't going to bother reading your story, and they won't see the ads that come below.
Right.
So, eat your own dog food. Anyway, sorry, that was a detour.
No, I love it, and I'm really happy you did that because my internet blanked out again. So,
I know.
So it all worked out.
You don't know what horrible things I said while you were gone. But
but I will. I'm going to ask AI to summarize that part of this conversation
in 3 bullets.
And we got some breaking news in there. Anthropic
we did.
Netflix Chairman.
That's a big deal.
I love it when it works out like that. I can't wait to read more about it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to read these key points and move on. See, they have their place for a podcast. It's perfect. Nick Clegg, who's former UK Deputy Prime Minister, also ex-Meta executive, has argued that requiring AI companies to secure permission for training its models with copyrighted works would effectively, quote, kill the AI industry in the UK overnight. Saw a lot of this being shared around. Said that artists should have the right to opt out, yes, but asking for consent in advance is not realistic because of the scale of data involved in AI training. which is, yeah.
So I've been
big
long
challenge.
on the record agreeing with this stance, even if you don't like Meta or such. I think this is just a smart public policy stance. I am amazed that in UK, this is the default. This is the starting point for the regulation they're going to come out with, is that it's opt out rather than opt in. And I think that's far more forward thinking than I would have guessed coming out of UK regulation, given their history in the internet regulation.
Totally.
But there's controversy about it. That's why Clegg is talking about it. That's why it's out there. Interestingly, I didn't put this rundown because it was auf Deutsch, but there was a case in Germany last week where the German courts said that Meta was okay to use material on Facebook and Instagram to train their models, and that it wasn't a violation. And in fact, Die Zeit, which I think is the best German news site, had a column saying this is the right decision. What's public is public. So I think we see an interesting, the artists in Hollywood are screaming bloody murder, but I think people are getting attached enough to using these AI models. They want them to be good. They want it to be built on better stuff. So I don't know where this is going to come out. I can't predict, but it's interesting. I see a slight shift here. I see that it's a real debate.
It is. And it's a kind of a rock and hard place sort of battle as well. Cause you got, especially in the case of, this being related to the UK data bill and everything, you've got on one hand, this idea of global competitiveness, being competitive on a global scale in artificial intelligence. What does that require? Well, it requires high quality data for training these systems. So of course, that global competitiveness drive is like, well, if this is high quality data, then we want to stay competitive in this very important moment. We got to do it. On the other side, you have the artists, you have the creatives who all demand transparency. They demand consent to protect their creative rights, to secure their compensation, something they deem as being fair compensation. And both of those sides are just completely at odds with each other.
Yeah.
It's
becoming
really interesting
like
to see where that lands.
It's like the Section 230 argument, right? I just got into it today with somebody on LinkedIn where it's just the same old argument. Oh my God, Section 230 enabled horrible things to happen. And I try to explain it. Then I send them to the Mike Masnick thing that says you were sent here because you said something wrong about Section 230.
Yeah, right.
Same thing for this argument, is that you just hear the exact same argument over and over and over again. And the repetition is wearing. But sorry, guys, I still have the opinion that I have, that teaching systems is the same as journalists reading each other, and there's a right to read, as Kathy Gillis would say.
Yeah. Yeah, there is still very much the perception by a lot of people who are very anti-AI that I see out there. There is the perception that this is straight up copying.
Right, it's theft.
You're copying, you're stealing and reproducing in the style. And yeah, it's a hard one, man. It's hard because I am a creator.
You are a creator,
and I can see both sides. I can totally see both sides. I really do understand both sides. The resistance and the embracing,
I mean, the early days of VCRs and for that matter, audio tape, you remember, there was a huge furor from the creative industries that this was copyright violation. How dare you copy this stuff onto your machine, right? We had huge fights about that. We finally won. Even then, when we had DVRs, there was a huge fight about that to record it on your DVR was a copyright violation. Well, we got over that because the public was going to demand it. They weren't going to be prevented. Now, put in Cory Doctorow right here, and he would say that we didn't go nearly far enough against these DRM issues, but still, public pressure pushed it a lot. That we have the right to copy and the right to read and the right to do what we want to with this stuff. So we'll see how it all turns out.
Yes, indeed. And we'll see what Benedict Evans has to say. I know we alluded to it earlier. That's going to be on the other side of this break coming up right now. All right. Every year, Benedict Evans does a kind of a slideshow on the world of technology. It's always an interesting thing to flip through. Does he also have like a talk associated with it?
Yes, he does.
He does. Okay.
So Ben has a newsletter, which I highly recommend. I read it. It's the first, when I start doing the rundown, it's the first thing I read every week. Because he finds things that oftentimes I don't see. Ben was at Andreessen Horowitz as an analyst there for years. That's where I met him. And then he left. He's in London, I think, and is an analyst and speaker and author. and it's just a really, really smart viewpoint on all this. And he's got a wry, terribly smart, posh British perspective on things. So I think the world of Ben, and I think he's really good at this. So he has this long, this one isn't as long as usual this time.
No.
But generally a
50
very
some
long
odd
PowerPoint
slides.
where he's trying to abstract what's really going on. And some of it was fairly obvious what was happening. But when I got to slide 15, he wrote about the NVIDIA moat. And if you compare Intel with NVIDIA, there's just a hockey stick of growth for NVIDIA, while Intel's coming down by not good steps. But the increase in NVIDIA is just awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
And he says this is also a TSMC chart. I mean, it's just what's happened with that world. And he said NVIDIA tries to build a new sun with custom compute and software ecosystem. And it's impressive where it goes. So that was one slide. Then the next one that was really telling was he charted, and this goes to our very first conversation on the show today, OpenAI models, model quality in LM arena by release date, OpenAI and all others. And what it shows is that all the others are tracking right along with OpenAI.
They're just right up there. It used to be so separated, and now exactly as we were talking about, they're all on par with each other, and so as a result, things get a lot more difficult to discern or differentiate or really get.
So when you have 6
about.
manufacturers all announcing basically the same slight leapfrogs of each other, so as Ben says, there's no apparent barriers to matching their quality, and OpenAI's first mover lead has steadily eroded. I think it's basically gone. It's there in PR still. It's still there in brand. But in terms of model quality, Ben is showing here, it's not. And then he says, the next slide, DeepSeek just proves the point by coming out of nowhere and getting up to as high as OpenAI and the field in no time flat.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. And what this all leads to slide 24, is he broke down, this is what he's really good at, broke down the strategies of big tech. How do we use this stuff? NVIDIA says they're going to build a hardware platform, though I just watched another keynote from Jensen Huang, and he's really pushing being a software and platform company as well. But yes. Then the other opportunity for Amazon and Meta is make it a commodity. And for Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, it's sell the APIs. And then finally for Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple, it's make it a feature.
Yeah.
Right. So Google's already out there, and this is what we saw in I/O is, look, you already know us for all these things. Now we just took a leap of what we can do with them. That's how we're going to use AI. Versus Amazon and Meta, or Meta with its open source model, Amazon with its hosting says it's a commodity. You want to do AI? Come to us. It's okay. It's just AI. So it's a different view of this stuff. But the bottom line on the next slide is models are commodities for now. And that backs up, I like this because it backs up what we said in the beginning of the show, that I think is the case. And this is going to be really hard, I think, before long, to justify the huge investments when you don't see differentiation, you don't see leaps, you don't see strong brand. I think it's going to be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Interesting. Let's see here. What were a couple that you did such a good job of explaining, but I liked this one. My favorite slide, one of my favorite slides, 13, FOMO drives a CapEx surge, which is something that comes up so often. I feel like when I talk to people about kind of where we're at with AI right now, and just the big companies, Meta, Alphabet, AWS, Microsoft, feeling like this moment is different, like they've got to be there. And that's, when people are wondering, why is everything AI right now? Well, it's because these companies have figured that this is, as this puts it, the center of tech for the next decade. And if that's the case, you do not want to not be there. And so as a result, we're just seeing, being infiltrated by massive amounts of AI investments from all these companies in a major way, and we're feeling that, and that's because of this. They don't want
to put numbers to it. You have in 2021, it was a little less than 100 billion capex, 100 billion on all of this, and now for those four companies, Meta, Alphabet, AWS, and Microsoft, it's more than 300 billion, more than tripled the capex. But that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too. Is we spent all this money, we better keep proving it by spending more money.
Yeah, that's true.
And once again, DeepSeek might try that again. Take
Nice,
three.
I like that.
DeepSeek might deep six all of that by saying you don't really have to spend all that money. And I haven't quoted the Stochastic Parrots paper in a while. What I will now, because they mocked the idea of the ever bigger model, and said it wasn't necessary to be ever bigger. And I think this starts to show that.
We're starting to really see that. Yep.
Interesting
stuff. Definitely worth checking out. And finally, ending on a sad note. AI 2027. This paints a pretty bleak picture. This is who is this? This is Daniel Tajlo. Hope I'm pronouncing his name, but he's put together this kind of this. I don't know if it's a story or if it's a prediction or what it is, but it's a story of the way things could go in the next couple of years with artificial intelligence.
So I came across this in a New Yorker piece by Joshua Rothman, who showed two radically different perspectives on the future. And one was this, which we'll talk about in a second, and the other, the contrarian one, was Sayash Kapoor and Arvind Narayan, I knew I'd mess it up, from Princeton, who wrote the book AI Snake Oil. And they see a future where, I think agreeing with much of what we say on the show, that it's being oversold. It's not going to be that important. It's important, yes, but it's not going to be that destructive. We can figure it out. There's a lot of hype. However, this AI 2027 is an effort to predict and scare the hell out of us how fast this is all going to develop by someone who worked at OpenAI in safety. So we see a lot of these people who are in safety, especially in OpenAI. We saw this in the effort to get rid of Altman a while ago. Is that the dissenters there are the real doomsters. They're saying this stuff's really dangerous and you're not taking it seriously enough, and I'm going to scream from the mountaintops about this, or I'm going to go off and start another company and raise a bunch of money to do that. So he went off and created this graphic presentation, which presents a view of AI up through 2027, but it's entirely fiction. I've seen this thing spread all around the web, and I'm hearing people talk about it. And it's okay. It's one scenario, and it's worth talking about, but it's just made up, literally made up.
Yeah, it is fiction. Yeah, absolutely.
It's fictional. So this is one scenario. Yeah, I guess you could convince me this could happen, but I don't see the receipts. Going back to earlier in the show, where it doesn't have a sense of meaning. It's not tied to a publisher to do bad things. There's still a power plug. I'm not so sure that this passes the smell test of reality. But prove me wrong. Put this in the archives. Come back to me in 2027 and say, Jarvis, you were wrong, but probably we're all dead by then, so you can't.
Yeah, there you go. What reading through this, what it kind of reminded me of is and maybe it's just the only, God, can I even talk? Only the kind of comparison that a fan of horror movies could ever draw. A film from the 1980s. It was a TV movie, I think, in the UK called Threads. That was about as IMDb puts it, the effects of a nuclear holocaust on the working city of Sheffield, England, the eventual long-term effects of nuclear war on civilization. And when I was reading through this AI 2027, I was getting real vibes of this film, which is excellent, by the way. It's incredibly dark and dreary, and it's meant to be kind of
that makes me want to watch it.
Yeah, it's meant to be like, here's a realistic depiction of what nuclear war might do to the city of Sheffield, England, if it were to happen. And kind of reading through this, I was getting similar vibes where it's like, by the end, I'm like, God, I feel gross. Like, and yet it is fiction. It's pure fiction. It's a story. It's not like he hopped into a time machine and traveled forward a couple of years and said, this is what I'm reporting on. There's a million different claims and a million different, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. It's all predictive, and Yeah. So, and again, yeah, like you said, come back in a couple of years and let's see. Was this forecasting? How much did it get right? Maybe it gets a couple of things right, but it's pure fiction.
Yeah, as I was contemplating this, Jason, the one thing that machine learning does is it predicts. Right? It predicts the next in a sequence. It predicts the next word. It predicts the next number. It predicts the occasion of this of breast cancer in these films, right? And for an area that is so good and built on prediction, the people who run it are really bad predictors because they're constantly saying that we're going to have AGI. We're already there. We're going to be there in a month. It's around the corner. It's right here, and they're not tied to reality. And the AI is, however, it gets things wrong because it's just predicting, and nobody can predict everything, right? And B, it's not tied to reality. So, so this, if you want to get depressed, you can go to ai-2027.com and then just throw all of your electronics in the lake and move into the cave.
Yeah.
And we'll miss you, but
it really also gave me Black Mirror vibes. It's kind of like, all right, this is like Black Mirror but in essay form.
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, worth exploring, I suppose. If fiction is your thing, you should check it out and see. But there we go. And that is the end of this episode. We've really put you guys into a really cheery note. Yeah, a cheery mood. Apologies about that. Probably could have reorganized things to end with Veo, with all the funny videos and everything. But this is just the way it turned out. You can find all of Jeff's work at jeffjarvis.com, The Web We Weave, the Gutenberg Parenthesis, now in paperback. And soon an audiobook?
No, Gutenberg Parenthesis is an audiobook. The magazine will soon be an audiobook.
That's right. The magazine.
I had to go in.
I can't keep it all straight.
Record things. Yeah.
I try, but I can't quite keep it all straight because you're so prolific. There you go, jeffjarvis.com. Go there, check out his wonderful books, and support Jeff in that. You can go to aiinside.show to check out everything about this show, to subscribe, of course. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, we've got the link. We've got everything that you need to know about all of our episodes, and you can find it there. And then finally, patreon.com/AIinsideShow. If you want to support us on a deeper level, you get access to ad-free shows, a Discord community. You can become an executive producer and, help us out.
Just like who, Jason?
Level.
Who's an executive producer?
Thank you for asking. Just like Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Nashville, North Carolina, Dante St. James, Bono De Rick, Jason Neifert, Jason Brady, and Anthony Downs. See? Now we're close enough to 10 that's my next challenge. Let's get to 10. That would be amazing.
Please, that'd be wonderful.
Anyways, thank you everybody for your support. Thank you for watching and for being with us. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on another episode of AI Inside. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.